I feel him. Thank goodness. Here's how he's done this postseason. Not great. 334 yards and a double-digit victory against the Chargers, but still turned the ball over twice. Against the Texans, he threw for 3 touchdowns, but again, coughed it up there. And against Denver, got the win. But it was like a snowstorm out there. And like, what are you supposed to do? It was like a scene from Elf, except everyone was, a professional football player. It wasn't a snowball fight. Is he due for a monster game?
No. He doesn't really, as excellent as he was this year, there weren't many monster games. The game against Baltimore was the only 300-yard game of his entire career. And there's a Jets game. Like the Jets, he had 5 touchdowns.
That was a stat padding game.
I think I could throw for 1.
And so he had, he was surgically efficient. And early in the year, surgically efficient plus incredibly explosive. Right. Late in the year, less explosive, still very efficient. And you can't really find a slice of football where Drake this season was bad. But there is a pretty clear, demarcation between when he was excellent and when he was solid. And that is where who you were playing came into play. So Drake this year against playoff teams, including the playoff games, is one thing I want to show you, which is, again, the team record, very good. Team points per game, that's above league average. That's solid.
Team points per game. I mean, a lot of that is like we lit up the Panthers, though, right?
That's only 1 of 7 games. I mean, you played 7, so no. But 8 total touchdowns in 7 games, 200 pass yards per game in 7 games, a 95 passer rating. That's not explosive. That's not a monster game. And then when you see where he did have his monster games, you guys played 6 games this year against teams that are drafting in the top 6. And those were the huge stat games. Now, the right-hand column, that is a level good enough to win on Sunday. Just to be clear, the right-hand column is everybody else.
The others, yeah.
Yeah, the 235 yards, 1.5 touchdowns to 1 pick is essentially, 2 touchdowns to 1 pick, 102 rating. That's all really good, but that wouldn't be a monster game. And so I just think, and that is Brew without even factoring in, Seattle has an argument that it's the best defense they will have faced.
Yes.
And
do you think the Seattle defense is better than the Texans defense?
So here's the thing. I think it's different. I think the way they are successful is different. But that game that you love that he played against the Texans defense involved him completing 55% of his passes and less than 200 total yards and 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny to see us really try to just drill down on things statistically. And listen, I get it. When I first started making videos, I was very much like, I don't want anything to do with statistics. I don't want anything to do with statistics. Then I quickly realized you're going to need to rely on statistics more because it's just you can't go through the film. I can't show you 100 clips of Drake Maye, and even if I did, it would be cherry picking, right? If I just keep picking, because you can pick out great plays from any quarterback, and so you look at statistics because it gives you this general sense. It's a legitimate sample size, albeit a statistical sample size, and drawing these types of lines, I think they could sometimes be beneficial. Sometimes they could be interesting. But this is something that I've recognized over the years that Nick loves doing these types of things. He did this with Bo Nix last year, how did Bo Nix play against playoff teams? And he always draws these lines and sometimes they're relevant and but I feel as though that they get emphasized when you're not really watching the games and when you really lean on those stats. If you don't watch the games, then it gives you something to build off of. But if you actually really look at these games, and that's why a top 6 pick, this is why I keep referencing the Giants game and the Jets games, because it doesn't matter how many touchdowns he threw against the Jets. And I mean the first Jets game, not the last one, and the Giants, and it was quality of play. It was the types of throws, avoiding the pressure, stepping up in the pocket, it's quality of play. And that's when I had my aha moment about Drake Maye of like what makes Drake Maye so great right now is his quality of play. It's his consistency. He delivers such an insanely accurate ball that when you have these monster games, there's a few different ways to have them outside of just beating up on a bad team. Of course, having a monster game typically for a quarterback is going to be one, you're an incredibly physical player, right? So that's where we see like a Josh Lamar Jackson, where it's a game where they're like, this guy, they just ran for 100 yards and had 3 rushing touchdowns or something, right? Like it's just, you're bringing such an insane aspect to your game outside of just being a traditional quarterback, which Drake Maye has to a degree, but not what Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson are necessarily doing. And then the other way is he's going to be like, so much of it is going to be schemed. And I don't mean now in the sense of schemed, because schemed kind of means multiple things. Scheme does. And like when I often talk about like a schemed throw, like when I say that, I mean it in terms of like it's a set play that like everyone knows they're running. Like it's the play itself. It's a schemed throw, a screen pass or something like this is the intention. Everyone on the field knows what the plan is. It's not like a typical like going through my progressions. It's a scheme throw. But then you also just have schemes in general where you know that like this is what you're looking to attack, and this is what we saw with the Los Angeles Rams all season long. Like Matthew Stafford would have these monster games because like that was essentially the intention of Sean McVay and the offense. Matthew Stafford was unbelievable and had unbelievable throws and unbelievable games throughout that course, but it was very much like we are looking to have passing touchdowns, throwing touchdowns, like we are working Devontae in the red zone, et cetera, in a way that the Patriots, just one, don't look to do. And throughout the course of these games, they're just incredibly balanced. You could make the argument that the Patriots are just the most balanced team in the NFL this year. So a monster game is just not going to be as much on the table as, say, what a Lamar Jackson does, a Josh Allen does, or whatever, because those teams need those monster games in a way that Drake Maye doesn't. And now the way how Drake Maye will be able to more likely have a monster game is against some of those lower teams because he can just let it rip, or he is throwing to open receivers all game, every game. And, you know, Caleb Williams had a monster game against the Dallas Cowboys this past season, and it meant nothing to me. And I got so much heat for it because I'm like, he was throwing to just wide open receivers all game. And actually, he was missing a ton of throws. It was like a game where he missed like 7 or 8 throws, but since the Cowboys were so bad, he still had like a boatload of yards and touchdowns. And they were like, look how great this game was. And it was like, hey, he hit wide open receivers. I expect him to be able to do that. That's different. Whereas Drake Maye could have that production, but I could think it could be an awesome game. Or he could also be playing against a terrible team, but he's not missing wide open in receivers, or he's just not missing throws. Yeah, he's hitting some wide open receivers, but also he's doing some unbelievable plays where I'm just like, oh, wow. The way how you avoided the pressure, how you sidestepped, made a throw while falling to your side. I'm like, again, quality of play. So to me, that is how I view. Maybe this will change over the years as Drake Maye's game evolves, but I just think right now, Drake Maye's superpower is his quality of play. That to me is what makes Drake Maye special. It's his quality of play. For Stafford, it's his arm. For Josh Allen, it's the fact that in any given moment, he can do literally anything that's needed of him. I think Lamar, it's his legs, Momes, it's his, arguably his ability to execute at the highest level, or off script, pick your poison there. I think I always try to kind of figure out which quarterback, what each quarterback truly makes, what is their superpower. For me, like for Brock Purdy, it is executing. And again, it doesn't mean you have to be, in the upper echelon. But just like each quarterback is going to have a defining characteristic. Jalen Hurts, it's honestly ice in his veins. Like I said, pretty executing the offense to the highest level of what the coach wants him to do. And for me, Drake Maye right now, it's quality of play. So the whole due for a monster game or drawing the line for for what he's able to do against the bad teams versus the good teams, it's quality of play. He plays how the game is needed for him to bring, what that he he does what's asked of him in the game. And you know, have we ever really seen him go full Superman in a against a great team that we've seen a Mahomes do, a Josh Allen do, a Lamar do? Not necessarily because the opportunity hasn't really fully presented itself yet, and he's in year 2. Not to mention as physical as Drake Maye is, and he is gifted with his legs and his mobility. That's not his power in a way that we see that with, you know, again, like a Josh Allen or whatnot, which again, I know bringing up Josh Allen for the Patriots is always going to be, you know, a double-edged sword there, but I just think it's going to be a little bit different for Drake Maye. And so, if anything, I see Drake Maye's version of a monster game is going to be what we've seen out of Jalen Hurts in both Super Bowls, where it's like using your legs in very strategic moments. It's not all about scrambling and doing crazy plays, but it's executing at the highest level, using your legs when need be, and just not missing any opportunity, right? And anytime that a play does break down or and there is any type of lane, you know, to run, you make them pay, right? You absolutely make them pay. And that to me is more of a version of a monster game for Drake Maye in this situation than he threw for 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 380 total yards. Like it's just I just think there's different levels or different ways of viewing how we conclude is a monster game. And you know, listen, this was a season where we had some like true monster games, like again, sorry, but Josh Allen with the 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, right? Like we've seen that. But like, you know, Stafford has had monster games, and one of them being against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it was like he threw to wide. Open receivers nonstop, and what I think he had like 6 times, he had something crazy, and it was just like the Jacksonville Jaguars were an absolute disaster. So I just think we have to be clear what we mean by a monster game, how is said monster games unfolding, and how much, because to me also a monster game means more when you're actually putting a ton of the burden on the quarterback, which is why I'm more impressed with the Josh Allen going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and having that game, because so much of the burden was placed on his shoulders in so many moments, whereas a Matthew Stafford has a monster game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and really essentially zero burden was placed on Stafford's shoulders in that game. I think a tremendous amount of burden was placed on Drake Maye's shoulders against the Buffalo Bills, the first game they played. And although I don't remember his stats off the top of my head, I'm sure I don't think it was anything that was spectacular. But to me, that was more of a monster game. A tremendous amount of the burden was placed on Drake Maye's shoulders, especially in key got to have it moments, and he answered the call. There was one moment where he looked like he was about to get sacked and hit, and he was able to scramble away and make a throw falling down. I think it was to Diggs, I forget at this point, but it was like, that leads to a monster game for me in a monster moment, where the burden was square on your shoulder. So, trying to just draw a line here of this monster game in terms of touchdown interception ratio, yards per pass, passing yards per game, I just think that's the wrong way to go about it. And I question if Drake Maye will ever have these box scores that you're just like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's, this is just outrageous. I mean, I just don't think that that's necessarily the plan or how, this will unfold. We'll have those games, no doubt, and maybe even some seasons like that, but I just don't think that's the way how the Patriots look to build their teams or how they look to execute, honestly. The only time I see that really being on the table more and more and more is if through the draft and whatnot they build a monster team. And so, kind of like when we've seen some of the craziest seasons with Tom Brady himself, when you're just like, well, dude, you're just flushed with talent right now, and it's just go, 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 go. And it's just, it's when you have that great of a quarterback with that great of a roster, it's just, yeah, man, it's just easy, right? When you're throwing to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, when you're throwing to, Gronk all day, you're just like, all right, this is easy. And I got the great coach and the great quarterback to tie it all together. Like, of course, like with Stafford this year, it's like you got Puka and Devontae and Sean McVay. Well, of course you're going to throw for 1 million touchdowns. Like, yeah, you're a great quarterback too, but like, of course your numbers are going to be insane. It's low-hanging fruit for someone like you at your talent. So that's just where I stand with Drake Maye in this moment. I thought we were going to have another conversation about is his shoulder injured, and I was like, I can't do this, man. What are we going to just keep questioning? How will his shoulder be like? You know, but they backed us into a corner, which I appreciate, and asked the question, is Drake due for a monster game? And it's just like, I think that's the wrong question. Although I appreciate the question to be backed into a corner, but I just, you know, quality of play, snorts. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Drake Maye, the New England Patriots? Is he due for a monster game? Did anything I say make sense about monster games, quality of play? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much.